Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get this presentation started. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a land acknowledgement. So the McMaster Science Society recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Even though the McMaster Science Society is remote this year due to COVID-19, we continue to acknowledge the Indigenous lands that McMaster Science and the university at large is located on.
Awesome. So I'm just going to be giving a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about in tonight's presentation. So we'll first talk about who we are, and then we'll talk about student life at McMaster when it comes to both research and academics, as well as general student life, such as social events, and then how you can get involved in student life should you choose to come to McMaster, what is the MSS, the services and support we provide, as well as some final thoughts and questions that we'll be answering.
So of course, I wanted to start off with who are we? Who are the folks that are presenting to you today? This is an old photo of Rita and I that I dug up from the McMaster Science Society Drive. Rita and I have been on the society for a couple of years. You can tell this is an older photo because A, we're standing very close to one another, and B, there's a Snapchat poster on there, which relevancy unsure at this moment. However, I can say that Rita and I are very excited to be here tonight. So a little bit about us before we get started. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Nicole. My pronouns are she and her. I am a fourth year chemical biology student at McMaster, and I am the current president of the McMaster Science Society.
My name is Rita. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm currently in my fourth year of a double major in biology and environmental science, and I'm currently the co-director of photography for the McMaster Science Society. All right, so as we mentioned before, student life at McMaster is super rich and there's a lot of different aspects to it. And I'm just going to quickly touch on essentially the research and academic aspect of it. So McMaster is a super research intensive university, so there's so many opportunities academically speaking. Personally, I've worked and volunteered in different research labs, as well as I'm currently doing my thesis and in a research lab as well, and I currently focus more on the ecology aspect and actually study freshwater turtles, which I never thought was even a thing that existed at Mac, so which really proves how diverse McMaster can be when it comes to research. In terms of the connection between the McMaster Science Society and research is that we host a lot of different networking events and workshops that we'll touch base on a little bit later in this presentation. And then different program societies will also host specific events such as wine and cheese socials for students interested in reaching out to thesis supervisors or just discussing their interest in research. So there really isn't any shortage of opportunities for students if you decide to focus more on research. And academically speaking, there's so many resources out there as well that we'll also touch base on today.
Alongside the idea of an academic focus to student life, we also at the MSS and me personally like to look at the other side of that coin, which includes the social life and community that you can find at Mac. So like Rita, I'm also doing my thesis this year in a lab, which is one of the reasons I am coming to you live from my student house instead of live from, I live in Toronto, but I live in Hamilton for when I'm doing research and when I'm on campus. But one of the other things that we really prioritize here in McMaster Science and on the MSS is about finding a community and finding individuals that you vibe with and folks that you can start to make memories with. Because especially when you're in a new environment such as university, there are a lot of things that are changing, a lot of things that might be different from where you were back home, whether you're moving from a far distance or you're a local in Hamilton. Going to university is an opportunity to meet new individuals and to find a new community. And at McMaster and in McMaster Science, specifically within the MSS, we host a lot of different events and services that help you meet other science students through common interests and get a chance to build that community at McMaster. So for example, on the right, that photo is from Light Up the Night, which is a McMaster-wide event. And those are some of the folks from the McMaster Science Society. One of the really cool things, I think Rita took that picture, which is a fun fact. And B, it's a perfect example of, even though there are a lot of like academic focuses, obviously, and academics, there's a huge portion of your university experience, student life and having a really good time at uni and making memories is also important.
So what do we mean by enhance your undergraduate experience? So like we mentioned earlier, as Nicole said, your university experience doesn't just stop once you exit your classroom. There's so much more to it than just academics, even though that is probably one of the main reasons you come to university is to learn and study in your classrooms. However, beyond that, you can also build your community at Mac by meeting different folks at different events and different clubs and societies. You can also network with professors and professionals in your field of interest. You can participate in extracurricular activities, different intramural sports, all sorts of fun clubs and societies are everywhere around campus. And then you can also, in the end, meet lots of new people and make memories, even though right now it might be virtually, but it's still awesome and wonderful memories regardless. So at the MSS, we're kind of all about providing the support for you in order to help you achieve what you want in terms of student life at McMaster Science. And we want to support all aspects of your time at Mac.
So, kind of going into the MSS, the McMaster Science Society works to enhance the undergraduate science student experience through providing resources, services, and events. With the goal to support the diverse needs of the MacSci community, we're run by students for students. So the McMaster Science Society is the governing body of all undergraduate science students in the Faculty of Science. We have about 7,000 members total, so 7,000 undergrads in the Faculty of Science. We're a big faculty. I believe it's actually probably more than that now. But essentially, the MSS works to provide services, experiences, events surrounding not only academic supports, but student life, research, etc., to help you get the most out of your BSc, out of your time at McMaster. And so at the MSS, we act as like a hub for all of the various extracurriculars and services that are being run. And a team of student volunteers comes together every year to execute all of the services and events that we run. And this is what our team looks like. So at the center, we have myself, the president, and from there are vice presidents as well as year reps. Those are elected positions. Those are elected every February. We have our Welcome Week planners. They handle all of the science orientation when it comes to Welcome Week orientation content, as well as our cyclones or our science Welcome Week representatives. And then under every vice president, there are a team of student volunteers, our peripheral executives, who work time and time around the clock to provide all of the services and events that the MSS has to offer, as well as communicate those opportunities to you, specifically with a highlight on our communications portfolio, especially with everything being online this year. So what we're going to do is kind of give you a bit of an overview of some of the key services, events, and resources that we provide here at the MSS, and things that you can look forward to as a member of the McMaster Science community.
All right, so like Nicole said, we do provide a huge variety of services. So we have research and volunteering opportunities, academic and financial resources, clubs and extracurriculars, as well as social and science pride events. And we'll just essentially get into each one of these in a little bit more detail. So in terms of research and volunteering opportunities, like Nicole mentioned, we obviously offer a lot of these in terms of being able to support you and your research and volunteering needs. So we have different events, including Symbiosis, which I'm actually going to go into a little more detail after this slide. But it's essentially a networking event in order to connect with upper years who are also doing research and potentially doing research in your field of interest that you might be able to connect with and talk and just have a constructive conversation with. There's also the McMaster Science Opportunity Board, which is actually an initiative started by our MSS year reps. And so this is essentially a Facebook group that allows for different groups and people to post their opportunities on there to allow for all sorts of science students to view those opportunities and potentially apply to those if you're interested. So it's a great hub for exchange of information, and again, networking on different aspects. And then a personal favorite of mine, I'm a little biased because I'm actually one of the co-directors of photography, is hosting this kind of program, I would call it. So it's called Scientists at Mac, and it's essentially a photography project that features researchers and student researchers at Mac that are doing all sorts of different research in order to share their passion. We essentially take a photo of them pre-pandemic. This would be a photo of them in their lab or in their preferred environment that would show off their research environment best. Given that the pandemic is in action right now, everything is at home. So we've created the home edition of Scientists at Mac, where we essentially allow you to submit a photo of, a previous photo that you took before the pandemic, or just a personal selfie that might explain how you're working at home during the pandemic and still doing your research. Because despite the fact that the pandemic is happening, McMaster is still thriving to do all sorts of research and volunteer opportunities. So Symbiosis is actually a super exciting event. Now, in previous years, this would also be an in-person event as well, but we are actually hosting an online networking event. So it's essentially an undergraduate research networking night where students are connected to upper years that share similar research interests, as well as different graduate students who might be interested to discuss the research that they're conducting as well. And it's essentially coming from a student perspective and experience about undergraduate research. So this would be super awesome for first years and second years, or even third years, to reach out and to understand what research might actually be like from a first person perspective.
So another branch of these services that we offer through the MSS and things that you can look forward to as a McMaster Science student are our academic and financial resources. Now we know for students coming into university, especially in their first year, academics and finances are two of the largest concerns that we've heard students express to us over the years. And in response, we've developed multiple programs in order to help financially and academically support students. So today I'm going to highlight three of my personal favorites and three of our strong and upcoming academic and financial resources on the MSS, which include our first year mentorship program, our science employment grant, and our tutoring service. So the first service to highlight is mentorship. So for those of you who are a little bit nervous coming into first year, unsure of how to navigate things like labs, exams, midterms, things that you haven't necessarily experienced before, the MSS has developed a mentorship program where incoming first year students get paired with an upper year mentor and act like a buddy or someone that they can contact over the year to answer their questions and get advice. Mentors are also responsible for sending out monthly themed emails, which include resources curated by our mentorship coordinator and their team. From here, they can answer various questions and overall just give first year students a liaison between many of the wonderful resources that are offered throughout the university, especially because it can be hard sometimes when you're in first year and trying to learn everything that's going on. So this is one of our programs in response to that. The second service to highlight is tutoring. So students can request a tutor through the McMaster Science Society. We have a database of trained tutors on our website who are trained by us every year. And we tutor pretty much every first year course, and we are working on adding more and more tutors to our upper year courses every year. And from here, students pay, the sessions cost $15 an hour. However, the MSS provides the first 3 tutoring sessions free to first year students. So this graphic was from last year when it was $10, but we most recently increased it to 3 $15 reimbursements, so 3 free sessions. And so it allows students to experience the MSS tutoring service for free at the start and get a chance to meet more tutors or just see if it is something that they want to actually continue using, or it is another way for tutoring to be more financially accessible to those who may need assistance getting a tutor through McMaster Science or looking for a tutor for any of their science courses. As well, our tutors also run group review sessions near midterms and exams where we work in collaboration with a lot of the departments to help make sure that first years feel prepared going into their examinations. And last but certainly not least, we're talking about our student employment grant. This is a new service that we started offering this year in response to COVID-19 that we are planning to continue. So if you are a student at McMaster and you are looking to apply for some sort of employment, you can submit an application to our science employment grant to receive up to $1,000 from the MSS towards a paid employment opportunity. We made $100,000 available to students this year. One of the reasons being is we know a lot of students got laid off as a result of the pandemic. Students were often the first workers to be let go. And so this was one of the ways the MSS wanted to help students try and keep their jobs and find jobs during the pandemic. And we are continuing to make this employment grant available to students moving forward beyond this year, because we know that a lot of students need support, especially if they're looking for research positions and are looking to find funding in some ways, pending on whatever lab you're applying to, looking at various job positions. Sometimes it is beneficial to come with some sort of grant on your side, and that's what the MSS is here to provide.
All right. Now to some of the more social events and things that we host. So for joining the MSS, if you are interested, we have a lot of periphery positions available. So I'm personally actually a peripheral member as well. So the co-director of a photography position, for example, is a position where you essentially apply and receive an interview and then get processed through there. So this is a great opportunity for those of you that are interested in becoming more involved with student government, especially in the MacSci community. We really do encourage you to apply, and we would really love having new faces in the society as well. And then we also have the MacSci musical. So this is something that I will go into a little more detail, but this might be slightly surprising to you considering that we are a science society. Why are we hosting musicals? We're not a music society, but we actually have a lot of really talented musically inclined scientists that come to Mac as well. So if you're one of those, feel free to check out our musical. We host auditions for actors, dancers, and vocalists, as well as stage crew. So those always open up earlier on in the year as well. So once you come in, feel free to check that out. And we also have a lot of different smaller committees on our society as well. So for example, the arts committee, the athletics and wellness team, as well as the formaldehyde planning team. Depending on your personal interests, those are all great committees to apply to as well if you're looking for a slightly smaller commitment compared to peripheral positions, but still want to be nice and involved in the McMaster Science Society. So MacSci musical, it is essentially a musical that is student written, student directed, and essentially shown to all students within MacSci and to the Hamilton community overall. So each year we try to rent out a theater in the Hamilton community and showcase our talents there. Due to the fact that there is COVID-19 currently occurring this year, we have shifted everything to an online version. Given everything, there will still be obviously social distancing rules and various pandemic policies in place when filming the musical. And all of the revenue for this musical actually is donated to a different local charity each year. So it's also for a great cause, on top of the fact that we're able to showcase a lot of different talents.
And last but certainly not least, like we had mentioned at the beginning, your experience at McMaster and McMaster Science is about giving you a large variety of things to enhance your undergraduate experience. So specifically here, I wanted to highlight 3 of our super awesome science pride and social events that we host the MSS. One of the main ones being I Love Science Semester. This is a tangent off of I Love Science Day, which is an event we used to host. Essentially, the idea of I Love Science Day, I Love Science Semester is that we give students the opportunity to get excited about science and for McMaster Science students to show their science pride. So this year we had various science groups on campus. So our program societies, each department in the Faculty of Science, each program has their own smaller society that helps run programming more on a smaller level for those students. So for example, there's like a chemistry society and a physics society, and we ask those societies to run a DIY science experiments for us. We record them and post them on our Instagram, and it's a great way to have other students get involved, record their videos, submit them to us. It's really cool. We had a pumpkin carving contest recently where students were able to participate and show their spooky pride. And of course, because of everything this year, we took it on ourselves, or the student affairs portfolio took it on themselves to make sure that students' wellness was one of their priorities this year. And so our athletics and wellness director has started off Fitness Fridays, which are bi-weekly fitness workouts for students to do at home. We also have Wellness Wednesdays where we connect students with various resources. And overall, the point of this programming is to show you that there is support and also joy within the Faculty of Science at Mac. Now, you might be thinking, Nicole, Rita, this all sounds really cool. How can I get involved with the McMaster Science Society? So one of the best things is that when you come into McMaster and are a McMaster Science student, you are essentially automatically a McMaster Science Society general member. Every science student is an MSS member, and as a result, you have access to all of the services and events that we provide. And if you want to get further involved beyond just being a general member, there are many ways you can do so. One of the ways being our first year rep elections. So every fall we elect 2 first-year students to sit on our executive, and they allow us to voice their concerns of their cohort and help us run programming all year. You can choose to be a part of our peripheral team or our elections, like our vice president and president elections, like Rita had mentioned. We have special committees like formaldehyde, etc., the MacSci musical, cast and orchestra. We also have an arts show, the ultimate art show that happens every year, because there are a lot of science students who are super passionate about the arts, and we have a lot of awesome events and extracurriculars for them. You can get involved in our Welcome Week through the Cyclones, who are our Welcome Week science representatives. That's Raj on that top photo there. He was our webmaster last year, but for a couple of years, he was a Cyclone. I wanted to highlight his pick there. But these Cyclones are students who help with that transition from high school to first year through like Welcome Week oriented programming. So things like what does the first day look like, and icebreakers to help meet other science students. So it's a really cool opportunity to get involved and meet new folks. Program societies, like I'd mentioned, and much, much more. But there are so many ways for you to get involved and so many services that you can be a part of, which is one of the amazing things about McMaster and about McMaster Science is no matter what you're looking for, no matter what kind of student you are, there will be a place where you can find a community that you can call home. So thank you so much for listening. This is the bulk of our presentation in terms of the us talking at you portion of it, in terms of what we do and kind of our services. But we now would like to take the opportunity to answer some of the questions that have been sent to us beforehand, as well as I believe there were some questions also eventually in the Q&A. Ben will probably be the person for those in terms of unsure of which ones we'll respond to at the moment. We'll get back to those ones. So as those roll in, feel free to leave questions in that Q&A and Ben will send them to Rita and I. So the first question actually, Rita, that's coming from the Q&A is, what is a thesis and why would someone choose to do one? If you are doing a thesis, what is your topic? This is great. We're both doing theses.
Great question.
Go for it.
Yeah, that's perfect. So a thesis is essentially in your final year. So this is usually your 4th year. Some people do their thesis in their 5th year if you do choose to take a 5th year. So a thesis is essentially a final year research project that is catered towards your own research interests, and you're working with a research supervisor. So this is usually a professor within McMaster University. Depending on the department and your interests, you can contact them and reach out to them in order to line up a project that works for you. Why would someone choose to do one? So a thesis is super great to get hands-on experience in research. And if you're interested in research-related graduate studies, grad school, master's, and stuff like that, it is highly recommended that you do take a thesis in order to just show the selection committee that you are dedicated to research and you have shown interest in your undergrad. So it's essentially kind of a taste of higher education research, but with an undergraduate spin on it. So you oftentimes get a lot more support from your supervisor. And this is also a great learning experience to understand if you like research or not. If after your thesis you end up not liking it, that is still something to gain so that you don't, continue down research without even knowing what you like and what you don't like. So I am doing a thesis, and my thesis is focused on freshwater turtles and reptiles overall. So I'm looking at kind of there was a huge wildfire up in Georgian Bay in 2017. So I'm looking at the impact of that wildfire and the effects it has on reptile habitat in that region, as well as anthropogenic development. So I'm taking a very much ecology, animal, wildlife, environment interaction aspect of science. It's a good blend of biology and environmental science for me.
That is so cool. One of the really cool things about McMaster Science is that there are so many branches and specializations within science at Mac. And so like Rita is doing a thesis within her department, and I am also doing a thesis in my department because I'm in a different branch. I'm in a different department. I'm in chemistry and chemical biology. My thesis sounds completely different than Rita's. So like for me, I'm working in the lab of Dr. Wiley. I am in chemical biology. So my research is focused actually on developing therapeutics for antibody delivery. We're actually taking a focus on COVID-19 and looking at therapeutics for that. So I am specifically designing nanoparticles, which are like really, 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 really small particles that can deliver various antibodies that can help fight the virus. One of the ways that we're doing that is we're actually looking at delivering it like intranasally, which is really cool. That is a project that is in development and something that I never thought I would get to do in my undergraduate experience. But thesis has been a really cool opportunity to get some lab experience in a lab that I had a lot of interest in. Dr. Wiley's research is really cool. And so it's one of those things where when you come into Mac, if that's something that interests you, it's something that's available to you and something that a lot of science students choose to do. And based on the field that you're in, you can take on various projects that take every form from turtles to antibodies, which is really, really cool. All right, let's see here.
So we've got another question. So Nicole, feel free to answer this one. So how is the atmosphere at McMaster regarding students, relationships, and making friends?
So one of the ways that I like to describe the atmosphere at Mac is everyone here is here because they want to be here and they want to be here to support you. It's the funniest thing. Like when I came to McMaster, I was very much nervous. I had never like moved away from home before. And one of the great things about Mac and its vibe and its community is that everyone is here to support you. That sounds really cheesy. I promise you, no one is telling me to say that. Like really and genuinely, everyone at McMaster is here to support and provide some level of whether it be academic mentorship or peer-to-peer mentorship, etc. The atmosphere is amazing. It is very much community oriented and supportive to individuals. I can give you a quick anecdote. When I was in first year, my first year chemistry professor, Dr. Greenberg, I went to her office hours once, and we had a conversation not only about first year chemistry, but also about like chemistry at large, something I was interested in and ended up going into. But that summer, I had ended up volunteering at McMaster in a lab. And she had emailed me asking if I wanted to grab a coffee with her, like a professor, someone who had taught me first year chemistry, was focused on that community oriented connecting with students. And it was truly one of the greatest, like one of my most cherished memories, in the sense of at McMaster, like profs are really, really great about caring about their students, and the students are really great at caring for each other, and community vibe is fantastic. That is really, I could go on forever, so we're going to end it there and we'll go on to the next question. I'm going to check to see. Next question. Rita, why did you choose to go into biology and environmental science?
Cool question. So yeah, I was in life science first, like life sciences one, so super general stream. So I took a lot of all the sciences, essentially chemistry, biology, physics. And coming in from high school, I always felt like biology was what I was really passionate about. I really liked animals and wildlife, and that's what I wanted to study and go into. And then I actually chose environmental science as a specialization in second year because I felt like I really liked my environmental science courses from first year and I could still take biology electives if I wanted. And then in third year, I switched into biology and environmental science because I felt like I really wanted to get a good mix of both disciplines. And it was a super smooth transition. I really didn't have any trouble catching up with any of the courses. And honestly, the registrar's office was super helpful. So this really goes to show like how flexible it really is, because even if you come into life science and you specialize in second year and you end up not super vibing with it, or you want to focus on a slightly different field or a completely different field, there is so much flexibility when it comes to like choosing the program that you're interested in. And so, yeah, I essentially just picked on personal interest and I looked at kind of the courses that were offered that I had to take for the different programs and felt like this was a good mix for me personally. And I know a lot of my other friends, they also chose essentially on what they felt like they would be most passionate in. And that is what I would recommend as well in terms of choosing a specialization program that you're interested in. Look at the opportunities that that program provides, the atmosphere in that program. Do you prefer a bigger one or a smaller one? Because certain departments are bigger, certain departments are a lot smaller. And go from there. But yeah, personal interest is really important. Awesome. So, Nicole, where do science students typically hang out on campus, and is there a dedicated space?
Wow, what a great question. These are actually submitted questions. We didn't pepper anything else in here. So science students, in terms of spaces to hang out on campus, there are a couple of buildings that are definitely more science like courses and classes and labs take place in. So there's the Burke Science Building. We have the Arthur Bournes Building where a lot of the labs are. We have like our nuclear research building, but a lot of times students can choose to hang out in the science lounge. So the McMaster Science Society actually has a lounge specifically dedicated for science students. It is on the third floor of the Burke Science Building, which is also our office. Our McMaster Science Society office is located. It's in the basement. Yeah, the distance is a little far, but it's where both of those spaces are located. So the Science Lounge is a space specifically dedicated for science students, including space to study. We have like a microwave and a kettle in there, couches, etc. Like it is a general space for students to hang out. Other than that, a lot of students do choose to hang out in the libraries and do work in the libraries. So we have like 4 libraries on campus. The science and engineering one is called Thode Library. One of the really cool facts about Thode is that you can actually get to the Arthur Bournes Building and eventually to Johns Hopkins Engineering, called JHE. Like they're all connected. There's like a tunnel like underneath in the basement that you can go through. That's one of my favorite facts about Thode. But Thode Library and other libraries on campus are where students can hang out. We also have the Student Center, or the McMaster Musk is what it's called. We have a cafe in there called The Grind. There are various places for students to hang on campus, but specifically science students, that's what the Science Lounge is there for. All right. So one of the questions that we have here, Rita, is when and where do you apply for positions for the MSS? I guess we didn't include the where, if you want to highlight kind of our hub where everything is.
Yeah, so we actually have our own website, so McMasterScienceSociety.com or .ca.com. Yeah, but so that's a great resource because we have everything compiled on there. We post all of our new like exec positions that are open, or if you want to nominate yourself for an election, that everything is up on there as well. And if you follow us on Facebook as well, so just search up McMaster Science Society, that's also a great place where we always update any news from the Science Society. And so if you're interested in applying, those are great places to start. And you can always email any of the related Science Society executives. So VP Internal would be a great person to contact in terms of applying for different things if you have any questions. But I would start with the website because that is a really nice and comprehensive area or a space where you can access all sorts of resources. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben O'Connor. I'm going to tune in and answer a couple of the questions that have come into the Q&A just because they're very specific to a large group of students and many of our programs. One of our questions is, what do online labs look like? That's a great question, and it's very different depending on the course. Two of our level 1 courses, Biology 1 AO3 and Physics 1 AO3, actually prepared lab kits to be sent to the students enrolled in that course, so that students can have that same lab experience or a similar lab experience from the comforts of home. We obviously understand it is not a perfect lab experience because you are not doing it in a McMaster setting, but you are able to fully engage in a lab experience from home and get that opportunity that other courses or programs may not have. And then just another one I wanted to touch on quickly was basically, what program should I choose? The program itself, we have 7 level 1 programs, 3 direct entry programs, and 4 gateway programs. We would definitely encourage someone to choose the program that interests them most. The next part of this question was, how does it help me get into a postgrad or medical school? The program itself doesn't necessarily guarantee you admission to a postgrad or medical school. Doing really well in a program that you enjoy gives you the grades and the experience to be eligible for a postgraduate opportunity. I would encourage people that have continued questions about that to join us for the Faculty of Science Recruitment Team webinar that's happening on Friday at 7 p.m. We will touch on that quite a bit during that presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Those are some great answers that you are definitely very much more qualified to answer. So we appreciate that. Rita, was it my turn to ask you a question or your turn to ask
I
me a
honestly
question?
cannot remember. I think it was my turn to ask you a question.
All right.
Yeah, so super straightforward question, but what drew you to Mac, and what would you say are some of the great things that you really like about Mac?
Yeah, so when I was applying for universities, I think when I got to McMaster and I had done the campus tour and I had interacted on the fall preview day, one of the things that really drew me to Mac was I did really want to go into like research and like science specifically. I knew McMaster has a really good standing in terms of the science programs, especially because as someone who is like super passionate about science and research, McMaster is Canada's most research intensive university, pending. I think that's still for this year. So it was one of those things where I was like, oh, science, awesome. And then I got to McMaster when I was at fall preview and just realized that everyone I interacted with was so nice. Everyone I interacted with was so genuine and really and truly seemed like they wanted to be there and wanted me to be there alongside them being the key term. Not necessarily like under them, like at their level, in the sense of like they wanted me to have the same experience, and clearly had gotten a lot out of it. Also, the campus is fantastic. All of the professors and staff that I'd interacted with really and truly were amazing. And it was just like very much one of those things where I was like, man, I really hope I get to go here, because my heart has already fallen in love with everything that it offers. And surprisingly enough, one of the things that really motivated me, or that I definitely piqued my interest, is that I participated in Cyclopedia, which is an MSS event we host in the summer for, I think I had bumped into it a couple years down the road, or like in high school or something, where they had answered like science questions, and I had met some of the executives, and I was like, this is really cool, like a science society for students like me. And it was just a really awesome blend of all of those things together, that kind of piqued my interest and definitely motivated me to go to McMaster. All right. Rita, my turn. I'm going to ask you, how are university science classes different from high school?
That's a really good question, because that's something that I really did wonder myself in high school as well. I always just heard that it was really different, but I didn't really know why. And I think to pinpoint it, it's a lot of independent learning compared to high school. So in terms of high school, you sit in a classroom of maybe 30 people and you got your teacher speaking to you and they give you everything like paper handouts and stuff like that. And then in university, you come into an environment where you sit in a lecture hall with maybe a couple hundred other people, and you've got one professor talking up in the front. And at that point, they don't really hand you paper copies of anything anymore, as everything is online and you can download your lectures to your own laptop. And so you're responsible for accessing your own learning resources, even though they make it super accessible. Obviously, it is your responsibility to go access those and to learn how to essentially learn in your own way. Another thing that is really different about classes is that personally, I think there are less direct evaluations. So a lot of classes have, university have weekly quizzes and maybe midterms in the exam, but they're not constantly asking you to hand in homework every single day or anything like that. No one's really, chasing after you for you to hand in a problem set or anything like that. If you have midterm coming up, it's your responsibility to study for that. And if you have a quiz coming up, it's your responsibility to learn how to learn all the components that will be covered on the quiz. And so definitely a lot more independence and a lot more of your own time management. And this is a super big pro and slight con as well, because it can be really daunting to have to manage your own time completely. But a super big pro is that you're able to have that freedom to use your time how you want it to be, and use your time to be able to use 1 hour for this class and an hour for that class, instead of sitting in a classroom all day. And that's another thing, you actually end up having less lecture hours compared to high school. You're not sitting in school from 8:45 to 2:45 every day or anything like that. You've got, your 15-minute lecture slot. Some of them are 3 hours, but those are usually like night classes that only happen once a week. So after your lecture, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. And so that's a lot of freedom and a lot of fun to discover your own interests and discover Hamilton if you end up coming to live here, or just honestly spend time focusing on your own schoolwork. So that's what I really like about it. But yeah, I think there's a couple questions. I guess just going off of that, the best way to take notes during class would be, I prefer a laptop. I find that's just the best way to type everything and make sure I don't miss anything. Because I know writing down things works for some people, and it also depends on the professor that that's teaching you, because some professors are a little bit faster when they speak. Some of them actually like write everything down slowly on even a whiteboard I've seen, or a blackboard. So some of them are more old school. So it really depends on your personal preferences and what you feel most comfortable with. But I personally use a laptop, and I know a lot of other people use laptops too. All right, so Nicole, what is the workload like for a science student?
Yeah, so definitely the workload for a science student, typically you're taking anywhere from 3 to 5 courses for a full-time like science student. So usually you end up taking about 5 courses per semester. For those of you, I know in high schools right now, I believe it's like a quadrimestered semester. Like either way, no matter what experience you're coming from in high school, it's definitely often a different layout. In terms of what the course load is like, that's one of those things where oftentimes, again, like Rita said, the one nice thing about is everything's outlined for you very clearly at the beginning of the year. All of the professors are very transparent about when deadlines are. So oftentimes, like, they will tell you at the beginning of the semester when your midterms are going to be, when your quizzes are due. And so it is a balance between some midterm content. So midterms are like tests. If you hear the word midterm thrown around, it's like a mid-term, like mid meaning middle of the term test. Did I need to break that down that much? I don't know. I've tests, they have quizzes, sometimes you have some assignments, it depends on the course. So I don't think there's a way to say how much work, how is the coursework, I guess. Like, it depends on what courses you take. It also depends on like whether you're, let's say you're taking on different electives, because you also have elective space, which means like in some of our gateway programs, depending on how many required courses you have to take. So the course load can often differ between various students. But it's one of those things where every professor knows that the first year students are coming in at with a fresh slate. And so a lot of them are very accommodating in terms of ensuring that they're transparent and open about what is happening within the semester, because they know that it's a first time for everybody in terms of balancing this kind of academic style and academic delivery of content. So I think it's one of those things where you kind of get used to over time. Like, university learning is something that you transition into, and that's what services like. For example, the academic advisors in the Faculty of Science office, as well as the McMaster Science Society, as well as the various other upper year students and professors who provide support. There are ways to essentially have avenues of support when you are tackling your course load, because it can be very different compared to a lot of folks have experienced in their first year, or in high school and going into their first year. All right, Rita, how do you know what courses to take? Like, if I'm like, oh, I'm going into this program, like, how do I know what courses I'm taking?
Yeah, so I would recommend taking a look at the undergraduate calendar created by McMaster, because it has everything that's comprehensive. And essentially, when you come into Life Sciences 1, for example, or any other like direct entry or more specialized first year programs within McMaster Science, there are required courses that you have to take. And so you just want to make sure you check out the undergraduate calendar in order to make sure that you are taking all the requirement courses, just so you don't miss any and you don't have to make it up for it in second year. We also have the MacSci, which is essentially kind of an interactive tool that you can use. And it's, if you just search up MacSci McMaster, it'll show up, and it essentially walks you through the different programs and specializations that you can go into. And if you click on them individually, they'll go into a little more detail about the potential specializations available as well. So if you're in, for example, life science first year and you're considering different specializations, that's a great resource to look at in order to access further information about different specializations. And then on top of that, you can definitely also talk to academic advisors. So these are obviously super awesome people, and they're with the Office of the Associate Dean's Office. So if you talk to a science academic advisor and you're concerned with any courses you're taking, or if you're just not sure if you're taking all the right courses, they'll be the perfect people to answer all of your concerns, and they'll make sure to check through your courses that you're taking and ensure that you are taking the right courses. So those are just some resources that are super great to visit if you are concerned or just have general questions about what courses to take. All right. So, Nicole, I saw a really good question. How do you balance academic and social life in university?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will be honest, like, learning that time management piece of it is part of it, in the sense of understanding like where your limits come with like committing to things and staying on track with your academics. The biggest thing for, say, balancing the social and academic portions, for me at least, is being open about like scheduling time for myself and for my courses. So I find when you come into university, like one of the big things is time management, understanding like how to block off time for various aspects of academic and social experiences and commitments that you have. And so balancing it comes down to understanding what your limits are during the day and blocking off time for yourself. So I actually just use my calendar is one way to do it. Like I'll block off like 2 hours to study for my midterm, and then I'll have like a science society meeting, and then I will block off time to go, you know, be on a Facebook Messenger call with my parents. Because like, for example, I don't live I'm moving in Hamilton, so my parents are back in Toronto. So I block off time specifically for a lot of those things. And so when you are looking to balance your time between like social and academic, it's about keeping yourself accountable to the various things that you've committed to, and eventually you find a method that works for you. Like I'll be honest, it's not a one size fits all thing for everybody, but it is one of those things that as you go through experiences at Mac, you will learn how much time it takes for certain things, and you will get better at scheduling time for yourself, scheduling time for others, and overall keeping that balance between the two, because it's one of those things that comes a little bit with time, but also is what mentors and upper year students are for, to help you do that, because then they can provide advice, which is, for example, something that I've done for a lot of students. Amazing. All right, we've one more question here. Is the final question, I believe. Rita, how accommodating / understanding do you find profs when it comes to nervous first years?
Question. Yeah, this is something that I also was very interested in. So coming into university, I was really nervous because I felt like, you know, professors are super busy people and they are not approachable and they're teaching huge classes, so they probably don't have time for me. But actually, especially in first year, a lot of the professors teaching first year classes are hired on as specific teaching professors. So they are super involved with the classes they're teaching, and they're making sure all of the students are doing well. And they are actually, most of them are quite accommodating. If you do have any outstanding circumstances, you can always email them and explain your situation. And so many of them are very nice, and they will give you extensions here and there. Another thing is all profs host office hours, and these office hours exist every single week. So if you have any questions, or if you just want to drop by your prof's office, that's a great way to get to know them and see if you have any concerns, if you have any questions from classes. That's like the perfect time to interact with them. Especially with first year classes, I really found that the profs are there to support you, and they're really not out there to get you. And so if you do have any concerns or any questions, please definitely do reach out to them. On top of professors, a really great resource is also your teaching assistant. So these are usually upper year undergraduate students or graduate students that teach your specific labs or your specific tutorials. So these are great people because they'll likely be the ones marking your labs, and they're oftentimes more accessible in terms of if you just want to reach out to them during your lab hours, they'll be there for you. So that's another resource. But when it comes to specifically professors, and when it comes to you know, you being a nervous first year, they really do understand the circumstances, and so many of them have been teaching for, you know, 20 years that they know how to support students.
Thank you very much, Nicole and Rita. You know, it was very informative. I hope everyone was able to get some of their questions answered. For those of you that still have questions, please engage with our science ambassadors. We have roughly 100 representatives, faculty, staff, and student ready to answer all of your questions in great detail. You can simply send them a message or schedule a meeting with them during their availability. I would also suggest that you join us for our Science Career and Co-op webinar happening tomorrow, as well as our Meet the Recruitment Team webinar happening on Friday night. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to engage with one of our ambassadors. And thank you very much for joining us, and have a great night.